My name is Terri Cruz, and on the night of my 32nd birthday, my own family threw me out of the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 6 years. They said I was a burden, a failure, dead weight dragging them down. My sister even laughed as she tossed my duffel bag onto the lawn and said, maybe sleeping under a bridge will motivate you to finally get your life together. But what they didn't know was that the house they were standing in, the one they felt so comfortable kicking me out of, wasn't actually theirs. And in exactly 30 days, I'd be the one holding the papers that would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Pause. Beat. Tell me, what would you do if the people who were supposed to love you celebrated your lowest moment like it was their greatest victory? The rain started just as I reached the end of the driveway. I stood there in the dark, a garbage bag in one hand and my old backpack in the other, watching the lights glow warm and yellow through the windows of the house I'd called home my entire adult life. Inside, I could hear music playing. They were celebrating. My birthday cake, the one I'd seen on the counter earlier, was probably being cut right now. Without me. For me, but without me. I should have felt rage. That's what people expect in moments like this. The kind of anger that makes you scream or punch something or swear revenge on the spot. But I didn't feel any of that. I just felt cold. Not from the rain, though that didn't help. Cold from the inside out. Like something inside me had finally frozen over after years of slow erosion. Maybe that's what happens when betrayal isn't a surprise anymore, when it's just the final confirmation of something you've suspected all along. I walked to the bus stop 3 blocks away, sat on the bench under the flickering streetlight, and pulled out my phone. The screen was cracked from when I dropped it last month. Couldn't afford to fix it. Couldn't afford much of anything lately. That was the problem, wasn't it? That's what they'd said. That's why I deserved this. 6 months ago, I lost my job. Not because I was lazy or incompetent. The company I worked for, a mid-sized logistics firm called Freightcore, went under after their CEO got caught embezzling funds. One day, I had a steady paycheck and health insurance. The next day, I had a cardboard box with my desk supplies and a generic email thanking me for my service. I'd been a supply chain analyst there for 8 years. I knew that job inside and out. I was good at it. But none of that mattered when the whole ship sank. I tried. God, I tried. I sent out applications every single day. Retailers, warehouses, corporate offices, even positions I was overqualified for. I tailored every resume, wrote personalized cover letters, followed up with phone calls. I did everything the career counselors tell you to do. But the market was brutal. For every job posting, there were 200 applicants. And every rejection email felt like another nail in the coffin. My family didn't see any of that. They just saw me at home during the day, saw me in sweatpants at noon, saw me staring at my laptop for hours. To them, it looked like I wasn't trying, like I'd given up. My sister Vanessa would walk past my room and make comments. Must be nice to have a permanent vacation. My brother-in-law Josh would smirk and ask if I'd checked the want ads like it was still 1987. And my mother, she'd just sigh. That long, disappointed sigh that said more than words ever could. But I kept paying. Even without a job, I kept paying. I had savings, not a lot, but enough to cover my share of the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries. I'd been contributing to that house since I was 26, right after I got my first real job. Back then, Mom's hours at the hospital had been cut, and Vanessa was between jobs, which was a polite way of saying she'd quit another position because she didn't like her manager's tone. I stepped up. I always stepped up. The house itself had been in our family for decades. My grandfather bought it back in the 70s, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a quiet neighborhood in Riverside. When he passed, he left it to my mom. She'd raised us there, Vanessa, me, and for a few years, our younger cousin Eddie, who stayed with us after his parents split. It was home. It was supposed to be the one stable thing in our lives. When I turned 26 and started making decent money, Mom sat me down at the kitchen table one evening. She'd looked tired, more tired than usual. She told me the mortgage wasn't paid off like I'd assumed. Grandpa had refinanced twice, and there were still years left on it. She couldn't handle it alone, not with her hours cut and Vanessa barely contributing. She asked if I could help. Not forever, she said, just until things stabilized. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I loved my mom. I loved that house, and I wanted to be the kind of man who took care of his family. So I started paying half the mortgage. Then, when Vanessa moved her boyfriend Josh in and they took over the master bedroom, I started paying more. They promised they'd contribute, but there was always some excuse. Josh's startup needed capital. Vanessa was taking online courses to boost her career. The money never came, but I didn't push. I just covered it. For 6 years, I paid. Every month, on time. Even when it meant I couldn't go on trips with friends or buy a new car or move into my own place. I told myself it was temporary. Told myself I was investing in something bigger than just me. Family, legacy, stability. And then I lost my job, and suddenly, none of that mattered. The night they kicked me out, it wasn't even a discussion. It was an ambush. I'd come home from a job interview, one that I thought went well. I was feeling optimistic for the first time in weeks. I walked in and found them all in the living room. Mom, Vanessa, Josh, even Eddie, who barely lived there anymore, but apparently felt entitled to an opinion. They were sitting in a semicircle like some kind of intervention panel. Vanessa spoke first. She always spoke first. "Terri, we need to talk about your situation." I set my bag down slowly, already feeling the tension in the air. "Okay, what's going on?" Josh leaned forward, elbows on his knees, doing his best impression of someone important. "Look, man, we've been patient. We've given you time, but it's been 6 months and you're still not working. It's not fair to everyone else." I blinked. "Not fair? I've been paying my share. I've been covering everything I'm supposed to." "With what money?" Vanessa snapped. "Your savings? That's not sustainable, Terri. You're draining your accounts to stay here, and for what? So you can keep pretending everything's fine?" "I'm not pretending anything. I'm looking for work. I've had 3 interviews this week alone." "3 interviews?" Josh repeated, shaking his head like I'd just admitted to a crime. "And how many job offers?" I didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Mom finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Terri, sweetheart, we think it's time you found somewhere else to stay. Just for a while, until you get back on your feet." I stared at her. "You're kicking me out?" "We're not kicking you out," Vanessa said, though her tone said otherwise. "We're encouraging you to take responsibility for yourself. You've been coasting here and it's not helping you. Maybe a little pressure is what you need." Coasting. The word hit me like a slap. I'd been coasting? Me. The one who'd kept this house afloat for years while they bounced from one half-baked plan to another? I wanted to scream. I wanted to lay out every receipt, every bank statement, every sacrifice I'd made. But I didn't, because I knew it wouldn't matter. They'd already made up their minds. "When?" I asked. "Tonight," Josh said, and there was something almost gleeful in his voice. "We've packed your things. It's better this way. Clean break." That's when I noticed the duffel bag by the door. My duffel bag. Stuffed with clothes, my laptop, a few personal items. They'd gone through my room. Packed my life into a bag like I was a guest who'd overstayed his welcome. Eddie wouldn't look at me. Mom stared at the floor. Vanessa met my eyes, and in hers, I saw something that made my stomach turn. Satisfaction. I didn't argue, didn't beg. I picked up the bag, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and walked to the door. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. As I stepped outside, Vanessa called after me. "Oh, and Terry, happy birthday." Then she laughed. Not a small laugh, a real one, the kind you give when something genuinely amuses you. Josh joined in, and the door closed behind me. That was 2 hours ago. Now I was sitting on a bus bench in the rain, scrolling through my contacts, trying to figure out where I could go. Most of my close friends had moved away over the years. The few who were still local had their own lives, their own problems. I wasn't about to show up on someone's doorstep at 10 o'clock at night with a sob story and a garbage bag. I had one option. Marcus, an old college roommate who'd recently moved back to town after a divorce. We'd reconnected a few months back over beers, and he'd mentioned he was renting a 2-bedroom apartment and could use a roommate to split costs. At the time, I declined. I'd thought I was stable, thought I had a home. I texted him, "Hey man, long story, but I need a place to crash. Can I come by?" The reply came fast. "Doors open. I'll put coffee on." I took the bus across town, my wet clothes sticking to the plastic seat. When I arrived at Marcus's place, he opened the door before I even knocked. He took one look at me, soaking wet, holding a trash bag, and just nodded. "Come on in." He didn't ask questions that night, just handed me a towel, showed me the spare room, and told me to get some rest. I lay awake on the bare mattress, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night over and over. Not just that night, all of it. Every moment I'd been overlooked, undervalued, used. And that's when something shifted. The cold inside me started to thaw, but not into warmth, into something sharper, clearer. I've spent years being the dependable one, the one who sacrificed, the one who kept the peace. And where had it gotten me? Thrown out like trash on my own birthday. I thought about the house, about the mortgage I'd paid, about the documents I'd signed when I started contributing. And then I remembered something. Something I hadn't thought about in years. A conversation with my grandfather right before he died. I was 16, sitting on the porch with him while he smoked his pipe. He'd told me something that day, something about the house, about how he'd set it up. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. I grabbed my phone and started searching through old emails, old files, anything I could find. It took me an hour, but I found it. A scanned copy of a document my grandfather had given me when I turned 18. At the time, I didn't understand what it meant, didn't think it mattered. But now, reading it again with fresh eyes, I understood perfectly. My grandfather hadn't just left the house to my mom. He'd put it in a family trust. A trust that had specific terms. Terms that included me. Terms that gave me legal rights. Rights that my family either didn't know about or had conveniently forgotten. I read the document 3 times, my hands shaking. Then I opened a new browser tab and started researching. I spent the entire night reading about property law, trusts, and estate planning. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. Not a vague idea, a real, concrete plan. They thought they could throw me away, thought I'd disappear quietly. But they'd made a mistake, a big one. And I was going to make sure they understood exactly what they'd done. The next morning, Marcus made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee strong enough to strip paint. We sat at his small kitchen table, and he finally asked the question, "You gonna tell me what happened?" I told him, not everything, but enough. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he just shook his head. "Man, that's brutal. Family's supposed to have your back." "Yeah," I said, "supposed to." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "So, what are you gonna do?" I looked at him, and for the first time since last night, I smiled. Not a happy smile, something colder. "I'm gonna get my house back." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "Your house?" "My house," I repeated, "and they're gonna be the ones who leave." Over the next week, I moved carefully, methodically. The first thing I did was visit the county recorder's office. I needed copies of every document related to the property. The original deed, the trust agreement, the mortgage records, everything. The clerk was helpful, though she seemed confused when I explained what I was looking for. "Most people don't dig this deep into family property," she said. "Most people don't have to," I replied. I walked out of that office with a folder full of papers. I took them to a coffee shop, ordered the largest cup they had, and started reading. It took hours, but by the end, I had the full picture. My grandfather had established an irrevocable family trust when he refinanced the house the second time. The trust named my mother as the primary beneficiary, but it also named me and Vanessa as secondary beneficiaries. More importantly, it included a clause, a very specific clause. Any beneficiary who contributed to the mortgage for a continuous period of 5 years or more would gain equal ownership rights. Not just residency rights, ownership. I'd been paying for 6 years. That meant I wasn't just a tenant or a freeloader. I was a legal co-owner. And according to the trust terms, any decision to sell, transfer, or alter the property required unanimous consent from all owners. They couldn't kick me out. Legally, they had no right. And if I wanted to, I could force them out instead. But I needed help. I needed someone who understood property law and trusts, someone who could navigate this without making mistakes. I called an old contact, a lawyer named Raymond Hale. I'd worked with him years ago on a corporate project. He was sharp, no nonsense, and most importantly, he owed me a favor. I met him at his office downtown, a sleek high-rise with glass walls and polished floors. Raymond looked the same as I remembered. Salt and pepper hair, tailored suit, the kind of calm confidence that came from winning more cases than he lost. He gestured to a chair and poured us both water from a glass pitcher. "Terri Cruz," he said, sitting across from me. "It's been a while. What brings you to my corner of the world?" I slid the folder across the desk. "I need you to tell me if I'm reading this right." He opened the folder and started going through the documents. His expression didn't change, but I saw his eyes sharpen as he reached the trust agreement. He read it twice, then looked up at me. "Where did you get this?" "County recorder. It's all legal, all official." Raymond leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. "You've been paying the mortgage for 6 years?" "Every month. I have bank statements to prove it." He nodded slowly. "Then congratulations, Terri. You're a co-owner of that property. And unless I'm misreading this, which I'm not, your family just committed an illegal eviction." The words hit me like a freight train. Illegal eviction. What does that mean? It means they had no legal right to force you out. You're not a tenant, you're an owner. If they want you gone, they'd need to buy you out or get a court order. And given that you've been actively contributing, no judge would side with them. I sat back, letting it sink in. "So what do I do?" Raymond smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed his job a little too much. "You file a claim. You assert your ownership rights. And then, if you want, you file for partition." Partition. It's a legal process that forces the sale of a co-owned property when the owners can't agree. But in this case, you don't even need to go that far. You can file for exclusive occupancy. Basically, you ask the court to remove them and allow you to live there instead. I stared at him. I can kick them out? Not you, the court.
But yes, if you play this right, you can absolutely flip the script. For the first time in months, I felt something other than defeat. I felt power. Not the loud, showy kind, the quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you hold all the cards and no one else realizes it yet. "How long will this take?" I asked. "Depends on how fast we move. A few weeks to file everything, maybe a month before we get a hearing. You'll need to serve them notice, which means they'll know what's coming." I thought about that, about the moment they'd open the door and find a process server standing there with legal papers, about the looks on their faces when they realized what they'd done. "Let's do it," I said. Raymond nodded. "I'll draft everything today. You'll need to sign off, and then we'll file first thing Monday morning." We shook hands, and I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't defeated. I was fighting back, and this time I had the law on my side. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went shopping. Not for groceries or essentials, for a suit, a good one. The kind of suit you wear when you want people to take you seriously. I found a charcoal gray three-piece at a men's warehouse, had it tailored to fit perfectly, and bought a pair of polished black dress shoes to match. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back. I looked sharp, professional, like someone who had his life together. Monday morning, Raymond called. Papers are filed. Process server will deliver them this afternoon. Good, I said. Let me know when it's done. At 4:30, my phone buzzed. A text from Raymond. Served. Your sister answered the door. I didn't reply. I just sat there, imagining the scene. Vanessa opening the door, expecting a delivery or a neighbor. Instead, she gets handed a legal summons. I wondered if she'd read it right away, or if she'd tossed it aside, thinking it was junk mail. Either way, she'd find out soon enough. That night, my phone exploded. Texts, calls, voicemails, all from Vanessa. What the hell is this? You're suing us? Are you insane? I didn't respond. Not yet. Let them panic. Let them scramble. The next morning, Mom called. Her voice was shaky, confused. Terri, sweetheart, what's going on? Vanessa showed me some papers. Something about the house? It's exactly what it says, Mom. I'm asserting my ownership rights. Ownership? Terri, this is my house. Your grandfather left it to me. He left it to you as part of a trust that includes me. I've been paying the mortgage for 6 years, which makes me a legal co-owner. You can't kick me out, and if you try, I'll take you to court. There was a long silence. Then, quietly, You'd really do that? To your own family? You threw me out on my birthday, Mom. You didn't even hesitate. So yeah, I'd really do that. She hung up. No goodbye, just a click, and the line went dead. Over the next 2 weeks, the tension escalated. Vanessa tried to play hardball, sending me angry emails threatening to countersue. Josh left voicemails calling me ungrateful and selfish. Eddie, surprisingly, stayed silent. I didn't care. I had Raymond, I had the law, and I had the truth. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Raymond advised me to stay away from the house. Don't give them any ammunition. Let the court handle it. So I stayed at Marcus's place, worked on job applications during the day, and prepared for the hearing at night. I rehearsed what I'd say, practiced staying calm under pressure. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine. Finally, the day came. I put on my new suit, knotted my tie, and looked at myself in the mirror one last time. I looked like a different man, not the guy who got thrown out in the rain. Someone stronger, someone who wouldn't be pushed around anymore. I met Raymond outside the courthouse. He gave me a once-over and nodded approvingly. You clean up well. Thanks. You ready? Always. We walked inside together, through the metal detectors, up the elevator, and down the long hallway to courtroom 6. My family was already there, sitting on the benches outside. Vanessa saw me first. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. You've got to be kidding me. I didn't respond, just walked past her, straight-backed, head high. Josh muttered something under his breath. Mom looked away. But I didn't care. I wasn't here for them. I was here for me. The hearing itself was almost anticlimactic. The judge reviewed the documents, listened to Raymond's arguments, and asked my family if they had legal representation. They didn't. Vanessa tried to argue her case on her own, stumbling through explanations about bills and fairness and how I'd abandoned my responsibilities. The judge cut her off. Ma'am, the trust agreement is clear. Your brother is a legal co-owner. You had no right to evict him. Case closed. Then he turned to me. Mr. Cruz, do you wish to pursue partition or exclusive occupancy? I looked at my family, at Vanessa's red face, at Josh's clenched jaw, at my mother's trembling hands, and I made my choice. Exclusive occupancy, Your Honor. The judge nodded. So ordered. The defendants have 30 days to vacate the property. The gavel came down, and just like that, it was over. As we walked out of the courtroom, Vanessa tried to corner me. "You're really going to do this? Throw your own mother out on the street?" I stopped, turned, and looked her in the eye. "You threw me out on my birthday, Mom." You laughed. "So yeah, Vanessa, I'm really going to do this." She didn't have a response. None of them did. 30 days later, I stood in front of the house. My house. The locks had been changed. The lights were off. They were gone. I walked up the steps, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. It was quiet, empty, but it was mine. I didn't celebrate, didn't throw a party or post about it online. I just walked through the rooms, one by one, remembering everything that had happened here, the good and the bad. And then I started planning. Not for revenge, not for anger, for a future. A future where I'd never let anyone take from me again. The house was mine, and this time I wasn't sharing. The first night in the house, I didn't sleep in my old room. I couldn't. Too many memories pressed against those walls. Memories of lying awake listening to Vanessa and Josh arguing through the thin drywall. Memories of counting pennies and wondering how I'd make next month's payment while they ordered takeout and planned weekend getaways. Instead, I dragged a sleeping bag into the living room and stretched out on the hardwood floor beneath the ceiling fan. The blades turned slowly overhead, casting rotating shadows across the empty space. Everything was quiet. Profoundly, unsettlingly quiet. They'd taken most of the furniture. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was the pettiness of what they'd left behind. The wobbly coffee table I'd hauled home from a yard sale, the scratched television stand with one broken leg propped up on old encyclopedias, the ancient microwave that sparked when you ran it too long. They'd taken the good couch, the leather recliner Dad had bought Mom for Christmas 3 years ago, the dining table that actually matched its chairs. They'd stripped the place of anything valuable and left me with the garbage. I should have been angry. Part of me was. But another part, a larger part, felt something closer to relief. Because now there was no pretense, no performance. I didn't have to sit at a family dinner and pretend we were functional. Didn't have to laugh at Josh's terrible jokes or listen to Vanessa complain about her latest workplace drama. I was alone, but alone felt honest. Alone felt clean. Morning came through the windows in shafts of pale yellow light. I folded up the sleeping bag, stretched the stiffness from my back, and walked through the house room by room. The master bedroom echoed when I stepped inside. They'd taken the mattress, the frame, even the curtain rods. Bare walls stared back at me. The closet doors hung open, revealing empty wire hangers and dust. I stood in the center of the room and turned in a slow circle. This space had belonged to my grandparents once. They'd raised my mother here, built a life within these walls. And now it belonged to me. The second bedroom, the one Vanessa had claimed when she moved back home at 24 after her third failed attempt at independence, was similarly barren. She'd left trash behind, though. Fast food bags crumpled in the corner, empty soda cans lined up on the windowsill, a broken makeup compact ground into the carpet. I grabbed a trash bag from under the kitchen sink and started cleaning. It felt symbolic somehow, clearing out the remnants of people who'd treated me like I was disposable. My old room, the smallest of the three, still had my bed frame. They hadn't bothered taking it, probably because it was the cheap metal kind you buy at a discount store, the kind that squeaks when you roll over. My desk was gone, though, the one I'd bought with my first real paycheck, solid oak with drawers that actually slid smoothly. I'd spent hours at that desk, working on projects, filling out job applications, trying to build something resembling a future. And they'd taken it. Of course they had. I spent the rest of that first day cleaning. Not deep cleaning, just surface work. Sweeping, wiping down counters, throwing out the spoiled food they'd abandoned in the refrigerator. The milk had curdled into something resembling cottage cheese. The leftovers in Tupperware containers had grown colorful layers of mold. I held my breath and dumped it all, container and contents together, into a garbage bag. Some things weren't worth salvaging. By evening, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You really screwed us over. Hope you're proud of yourself." I stared at the message for a long moment, then blocked the number. There would be more, I knew. More texts, more calls, more attempts to make me feel guilty for reclaiming what was mine. But I was done absorbing their poison. Done letting their words shape how I saw myself. Marcus stopped by that night with pizza and a six-pack. We sat on the floor in the empty living room, backs against the wall, and ate straight from the box. He didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't offer sympathy or advice. He just ate pizza and told me about his day, about the weird customer at his job who'd tried to return a lawnmower he'd clearly used for an entire season, about the neighbor's cat that kept sneaking into his apartment. Normal stuff, grounding stuff. When he left, I locked the door behind him and stood in the entryway for a while. The house felt bigger, without furniture, without people. Bigger and somehow more mine. I walked back to the living room, unrolled the sleeping bag again, and lay down. Sleep came easier that second night. Over the next week, I started rebuilding. Not the house, though that needed work too. I started rebuilding myself. Every morning I woke at 6, showered, dressed in clean clothes, and sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop. I updated my resume, sent out applications, followed up on leads. The rejections still came, steady and demoralizing, but I kept going. Because now I had something to prove. Not to my family, to myself. I also started documenting everything. Every penny I'd paid toward the mortgage over the past 6 years. Every utility bill, every grocery receipt, every contribution I'd made to keeping that house functional. I built spreadsheets, organized files, created a comprehensive record of exactly how much I'd invested. Raymond had suggested it during one of our follow-up calls. If they try to come after you for any kind of settlement, you'll want proof of your contributions. They didn't try to settle, though. They tried something else. 2 weeks after they'd vacated, I received a certified letter. I signed for it at the door, thanked the postal worker, and opened it right there on the porch. Inside was a demand letter from a lawyer I'd never heard of. It claimed that I'd violated the terms of the trust by forcing the primary beneficiary, my mother, out of her home. It demanded that I immediately cease occupancy and return the property to her control, or face legal action for elder abuse and financial exploitation. I read it twice, feeling my chest tighten. Then I called Raymond. He answered on the second ring. "Terry, what's up?" "I just got a letter. They're threatening to sue me for elder abuse." There was a pause. "Forward it to me, right now." I took a photo and sent it over. Heard him tapping on his keyboard. Then, after a minute, he laughed. Actually laughed. "This is garbage. Whoever wrote this either doesn't know property law or is hoping you'll panic and fold." "It's not legitimate?" "Oh, it's a real letter from a real lawyer, but the claims are nonsense. You didn't violate anything. The court already ruled in your favor. Your mother wasn't removed due to abuse or exploitation. She was removed because she participated in an illegal eviction. There's zero basis for this." I sat down on the porch steps, relief flooding through me. So what do I do? Nothing. Ignore it. If they actually file a suit, which I doubt they will, we'll respond then. But this is just intimidation. They're hoping you'll cave. I'm not caving. Good. Then we're done here. Don't let this rattle you. I hung up and stared at the letter in my hand. They were trying to scare me, trying to make me feel like the bad guy. And for a moment, just a moment, it almost worked. I thought about my mom, about how she must be struggling now, displaced and probably furious. I thought about the years she'd spent raising me, the sacrifices she'd made. And I felt the old familiar tug of guilt, the instinct to put others first, to smooth things over, to keep the peace. But then I remembered my birthday. Remembered standing in the rain with a trash bag, listening to laughter through the closed door. Remembered the group chat messages, the mockery, the years of being used and overlooked. And the guilt dissolved.
This wasn't cruelty. This was consequence. The following week, I got a job offer. Not the dream position I'd been hoping for, but something solid. A logistics coordinator role at a freight company across town. The pay was decent, the benefits were real, and they needed someone to start immediately. I accepted on the spot. My first day back at work felt surreal. I put on a button-down shirt and slacks, packed a lunch in a cooler bag, and drove to the industrial district where the company's warehouse sat surrounded by chain-link fence. Inside, the air smelled like cardboard and diesel. Forklifts beeped as they reversed. Workers in high-visibility vests moved between rows of shelving stacked floor to ceiling. My supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Claudia, showed me to a small office with a desk, a computer, and a view of the loading docks. Your job is to make sure shipments go where they're supposed to go, when they're supposed to go there, she explained. Sounds simple. It's not. But you've got experience, so you'll figure it out. I did figure it out, and for the first time in months, I felt useful, competent, like I was contributing something real. At the end of my first week, Claudia stopped by my desk. "You're doing good, Cruz. Keep it up." Those 5 words meant more than she probably realized. With a steady income again, I started furnishing the house. Nothing fancy. A second-hand couch from a thrift store, a kitchen table from a garage sale, a mattress and frame from a discount outlet. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just trying to build a life that felt stable, comfortable, mine. One Saturday afternoon, as I was assembling a bookshelf in the living room, someone knocked on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Marcus was at work, and I hadn't ordered anything. I opened the door cautiously. Eddie stood on the porch, my cousin. The one who'd sat silent during my ambush, who'd voted with the rest of them to throw me out. He looked uncomfortable, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, eyes avoiding mine. "Hey," he said quietly. I didn't respond, just stood there, waiting. He shifted his weight. "Can I come in?" "Why?" "I want to talk, that's all. Just talk." I considered closing the door, considered telling him to leave and never come back. But something in his expression stopped me. He looked genuinely miserable, so I stepped aside and let him in. He walked into the living room, looked around at the sparse furniture, the bare walls. "Place looks different. They took everything worth taking." He nodded. "Yeah, I figured." He sat on the arm of the couch, still not meeting my eyes. "Look, Terry, I need to say something. I should have said it a long time ago, but I didn't. I was a coward." I crossed my arms. "Go on." "What they did to you was wrong. The whole thing. Kicking you out, the way they talked about you behind your back, all of it. And I just went along with it. I didn't speak up. I didn't defend you. I let them treat you like you were worthless, and I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air between us. I wanted to accept it immediately, wanted to tell him it was fine, water under the bridge. But it wasn't fine, and I wasn't going to pretend anymore. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. He finally looked at me. "Because I was scared. Vanessa, she's got this way of making you feel like garbage if you go against her. And your mom, she always takes Vanessa's side. I knew if I defended you, I'd become the target. So I kept my mouth shut, and I hate myself for it. You should." He flinched but didn't argue. "I know, I do. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what they did, and I see what I did by doing nothing. And if there's any way I can make it right, I will." I studied him for a long moment. Eddie had always been the quiet one, the one who drifted along with whatever current was strongest. He wasn't malicious, just weak. And maybe that wasn't entirely his fault. He'd grown up in chaos, bounced between homes, learned early that survival meant blending in. But understanding why someone hurt you doesn't erase the hurt. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally. "But I don't know if we can go back to how things were. I'm not asking to go back. I just want you to know I'm not on their side anymore. I should have realized that sooner, but I didn't. I'm realizing it now." "What changed?"
He looked down at his hands. I saw what they did after you left. The way Vanessa celebrated, like she'd won something. The way your mom just went along with it, like throwing you out was no big deal. And Josh, he was talking about how much easier things would be now, how they could finally do what they wanted with the house. It made me sick. And then, when the lawsuit happened, when they realized you weren't just going to disappear, Vanessa lost it. She was screaming about how ungrateful you were, how you'd ruined everything. And I just thought, he didn't ruin anything. They did. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to forgive him on the spot, to tell him we were good, that I understood. But another part, the part that had been burned too many times, held back. I need time, I said. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I need to think about it. Eddie nodded. That's fair. Take all the time you need. He stood, started toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you got the house. You deserved it. You were the only one who ever actually cared about it. After he left, I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at nothing. His apology had cracked something open inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it, and that was more than I'd expected. The weeks turned into months. Winter came early that year, bringing frost and gray skies and the kind of cold that seeped into your bones. I bought a space heater for the living room, starting keeping the thermostat lower to save money. Work stayed steady. I got a small raise after my 90-day review. Claudia told me I was one of the most reliable coordinators they'd had in years. I didn't tell her about the months of unemployment, the rejection emails, the nights I'd spent wondering if I'd ever find work again. I just thanked her and kept showing up. The house started to feel less empty. I hung pictures on the walls, cheap prints from a home goods store. I bought plants, small succulents that didn't require much care. I even adopted a cat from the local shelter, a scruffy orange tabby with a crooked ear. I named him Brick because he was dense and stubborn and didn't care what anyone thought of him. We understood each other. One evening in late November, my phone rang. An unknown number, but local area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Terry? The voice was hesitant, older. It took me a second to place it. Mom? Yeah, it's me. Silence stretched between us. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what she wanted. Finally, she spoke again. I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything that happened. About what we did. Okay. I need you to understand something. I didn't want to kick you out. That was Vanessa's idea. She kept saying you needed tough love, that you were taking advantage, that we were enabling you. And I listened to her. I shouldn't have, but I did. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. You could have said no. I know, I should have. But Vanessa, she's always been so forceful, and Josh backs her up on everything. I felt outnumbered. So you threw me out because it was easier than standing up to them. She didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, yes. At least she was honest. That was something. Why are you calling me now? Because I miss you. Because I've been staying with your aunt in Phoenix, and every day I wake up and think about that house, about the life I had there. And I realize I threw it all away. I threw you away, and I don't know how to fix it. Part of me wanted to tell her it was too late, that the damage was permanent. But another part, the part that still remembered being a kid and feeling safe when she tucked me in at night, softened. I don't know how to fix it either, Mom. Can we try? Can we at least try? I thought about it. Thought about forgiveness and grudges and the cost of carrying anger. Maybe, but it's going to take time. A lot of time. I understand. She paused. Vanessa's not talking to me, by the way. She blames me for losing the house. Says I should have fought harder, should have hired a better lawyer. She won't return my calls. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm getting what I deserve. You're getting what you deserve. The universe has a way of balancing things out. We talked for a few more minutes, awkward and halting. I didn't promise anything, didn't invite her to visit or suggest we meet up. But I didn't hang up on her either, and when we finally said goodbye, it felt less like an ending and more like a pause. December arrived, bringing with it holiday decorations on every corner and an uncomfortable awareness of how different this year was from all the ones before.
In the past, I'd spent Christmas at the house, surrounded by family, pretending everything was fine. This year, I spent it alone. Marcus invited me over, but I declined. I needed the solitude, needed to prove to myself that I could be okay without them. Christmas morning, I woke up to snow falling softly outside the window. Brick was curled up on the foot of the bed, purring in his sleep. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and looked out at the yard. The grass was buried under white. The trees looked skeletal and beautiful. Everything was still. I thought about my grandfather, about the trust he'd set up, the safeguards he'd built into the property. He must have known, on some level, that his daughter might not be the most responsible steward, that conflicts might arise, and he'd prepared for it. He'd made sure that the people who actually invested in the house, who cared for it, would have a claim to it. In a way, he'd protected me from beyond the grave. I made a decision that morning. I would honor his memory by taking care of this place. Not just maintaining it, but improving it, making it into something he'd be proud of. Over the next few months, I started small projects. I repainted the kitchen, replacing the chipped yellow with a clean white. I fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, replaced the broken tiles in the entryway. I planted a small garden in the backyard, vegetables and herbs that would grow in the spring. Each improvement felt like an act of reclamation, like I was writing over the old story with a new one. Work continued to go well. By March, I'd been promoted to senior coordinator. The raise was significant enough that I could start saving again, rebuilding the financial cushion I'd drained during my months of unemployment. I opened a separate savings account, one I labeled Future, in my banking app. Every paycheck, I transferred a portion into it. I didn't know what the future held, but I wanted to be ready for it. One afternoon in early April, I was at the hardware store picking up supplies for a fence repair when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. Danielle Ortiz, a woman I'd dated briefly in my mid-20s. We'd parted on good terms, just two people whose lives were heading in different directions. She looked the same, still had that easy smile and sharp eyes. "Terri Cruz," she said, grinning. "I heard a rumor you were back in town." "Rumor's true. How've you been?" "Good. Busy. I'm managing a coffee shop downtown now. You should stop by sometime." We chatted for a few minutes, catching up on the broad strokes of our lives. When I mentioned I was living in my grandfather's old house, her expression shifted. "Wait, that house on Maplewood? I thought your mom lived there." "Long story." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Well, if you ever want to share long stories over coffee, you know where to find me." I took her up on that offer a week later. We met at her shop, a cozy place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Over lattes, I told her everything. The job loss, the eviction, the trust, the lawsuit, the house. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she shook her head slowly. "That's brutal. But also, good for you. Seriously. A lot of people would have just let it go. I almost did, but you didn't. That takes guts." We started meeting regularly after that. Not dating, not at first, just two people who enjoyed each other's company. She'd tell me about the chaos of running a small business, the difficult customers and broken espresso machines. I'd tell her about my projects on the house, the small victories and unexpected setbacks. It was easy, comfortable, and slowly, over weeks and then months, it became something more. By summer, we were officially together. She spent weekends at the house, helping me sand down the deck or plant flowers in the front yard. Brick loved her, which I took as a good sign. She fit into my life in a way that felt natural, like she'd always been there. One evening, as we sat on the newly repaired porch watching the sunset, she asked me something I hadn't expected. "Do you ever regret it, fighting for this place?" I thought about it. "No, not even a little. Not even with your family?" "Especially not with my family. They taught me something important. They taught me that loyalty isn't automatic. It has to be earned. And they hadn't earned mine." She nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder.
You're tougher than you look, Cruz. Had to be. As the days grew longer and the house continued to transform, I realized something. I wasn't just rebuilding a property. I was rebuilding a life. A life where I wasn't defined by other people's expectations or failures. A life where I got to decide what mattered and who deserved a place in it. And for the first time and as long as I could remember, that life felt like it was actually mine. The call came on a Tuesday morning in August, just as I was leaving for work. Unknown number again, but this time I recognized the area code, Phoenix. I answered while locking the front door, Brick weaving between my ankles and meowing for attention. "Terri, it's your mother. Don't hang up, please." I paused, keys in hand. We'd spoken a handful of times since that first call in November, brief conversations that circled around real topics without ever landing on them. "I'm listening. I need to tell you something. About Vanessa." Her voice wavered. "She's in trouble. Financial trouble. The kind that doesn't go away quietly." I walked back inside and sat on the couch. What kind of trouble? Josh left her. Took half their savings and disappeared 3 months ago. Turns out he'd been running some kind of investment scheme, promising people returns on cryptocurrency projects that didn't exist. When it collapsed, he ran, left Vanessa holding the bag. She's been served with lawsuits, multiple lawsuits. She's going to lose everything. I should have felt satisfaction, some kind of vindication, but all I felt was tired. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she asked me to call you. She won't do it herself, too proud. But she's desperate, Terri. She's about to be evicted from her apartment. She has nowhere to go." The irony wasn't lost on me. She threw me out with nowhere to go. "I know. Believe me, I know. I'm not asking you to help her. I'm just telling you what's happening. What you do with that information is up to you." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. Danielle emerged from the bedroom, hair still damp from the shower. She took one look at my face and sat beside me. "What happened?" I told her. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks she deserves exactly what she's getting. She made her choices. Let her live with them. And the other part? The other part remembers that she's still my sister, that we grew up together, that there were good times before everything went bad." Danielle took my hand. "You don't owe her anything, not after what she did. But if you decide to help, that doesn't make you weak. It just makes you someone who chose mercy over revenge." I didn't respond to my mother's call right away. I needed time to think, to work through the tangle of anger and obligation and old wounds. I went to work, moved through my tasks mechanically, came home, and sat on the porch with Breck in my lap. The neighborhood was quiet. Kids riding bikes down the street, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, the smell of someone grilling burgers drifting through the evening air. Normal life, the kind I'd fought so hard to build. 3 days later, I called Vanessa directly. She answered on the first ring, and her voice, usually so sharp and confident, sounded hollow. "Terri, Mom told me what happened." "Of course she did." A bitter laugh. "I told her not to bother you. Told her you'd probably just enjoy watching me crash and burn. Is that what you think of me?" Silence. Then, quieter. "I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know anything anymore." I could hear it in her voice, the defeat, the desperation. I'd been there. I knew exactly what that felt like. "Where are you staying?" "Friend's couch, for now, but I can't stay much longer. She's got her own problems." "And Eddie? Mom?" "Eddie's barely scraping by himself. And Mom, she's living with Aunt Rita in a 1-bedroom apartment. There's no room." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "I have a spare bedroom." The silence that followed was so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, "What?" I said, "I have a spare bedroom. It's not much. Secondhand furniture, no frills, but it's a roof, and it's available. Temporarily." "You're offering to let me stay with you?" Her voice cracked. "After everything I did?" "I'm offering you a place to land while you figure things out. This isn't forgiveness, Vanessa. This isn't me saying what you did was okay. But you're my sister.
And you need help, so I'm helping. That's it." She started crying, real crying, not the performative kind she used to deploy when she wanted sympathy. "I don't deserve this." "No, you don't, but I'm doing it anyway." She moved in a week later, arriving with 2 suitcases and a defeated expression. I'd prepared the spare room, changed the sheets, cleared space in the closet. When she walked through the door and looked around at the house, our house, the one she'd celebrated selling, her face crumpled. "It looks different. I've been fixing it up, making it feel like home." She set her suitcases down in the entryway. "I never thought I'd be standing here again, especially not like this. Life's full of surprises." The first few days were tense. We moved around each other carefully, like boxers circling the ring, waiting to see who'd throw the first punch. But the punch never came. Instead, slowly, we started talking, real talking. She told me about Josh, about how she'd ignored red flags because she wanted to believe in the fantasy he'd sold her. She told me about the shame of losing everything, of having to ask for help after years of acting like she had it all figured out. And I told her about the months after I lost my job, about the fear and the isolation and the crushing weight of feeling worthless. One night, about 2 weeks after she'd moved in, we were sitting at the kitchen table after dinner. She'd cooked, a gesture that surprised me. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread, but it was the first time in years she'd done something for me without expecting something in return. She pushed her plate aside and looked at me directly. "I need to say this, and I need you to let me finish." I nodded. "What I did to you was unforgivable. Not just the eviction, though that was bad enough. All of it. The way I treated you for years, like you were there to serve me, like your accomplishments didn't matter because you weren't loud about them, like your struggles were weaknesses instead of just life being hard. I turned you into the villain in my story because it was easier than admitting I was the problem. And when you fought back, when you stood up for yourself, I hated you for it because it forced me to see myself clearly, and I didn't like what I saw." She stopped, her hands trembling slightly. "I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I can't undo the damage. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm ashamed. Deeply, truly ashamed." I sat with her words for a moment. They felt genuine, not performative or manipulative, just honest. "I appreciate you saying that. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe. But it's going to take time, a lot of time. And it's going to require you proving that you've actually changed, not just saying you have." She nodded. "That's fair. That's more than fair." Over the following months, something shifted between us. Not back to how things were before, because those dynamics were broken and unfixable, but into something new, something healthier. She got a job at a call center, nothing glamorous but steady. She contributed to groceries, helped with household chores, started seeing a therapist to work through her own issues. And slowly, incrementally, we rebuilt a relationship based on mutual respect instead of obligation and resentment. Eddie started coming around more often too. Sunday dinners became a thing, just the 3 of us and sometimes Danielle. We didn't talk about the past much, didn't rehash old arguments or relitigate who was right or wrong. We just existed together, trying to build something better than what we'd had before. Mom called more regularly. She never asked to move back, never suggested that the house should be hers again. She'd accepted the reality of the situation. She'd made choices, and those choices had consequences. But she was trying, in her own way, to repair what she could. I didn't make it easy for her, didn't rush to absolve her, but I took her calls, listened when she talked, and slowly, the anger I'd carried began to fade. One evening in late October, almost a full year after I'd won the house back, I was sitting on the porch with Danielle. The air had that autumn crispness, leaves turning gold and red on the trees lining the street. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder.
You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't fought back? All the time. And I'd probably still be crashing on Marcus's couch, still sending out resumes and getting rejected, still feeling like a failure. Do you still feel like that? Like a failure? I thought about the job I'd built into a career, about the house I'd reclaimed and transformed, about the relationships I'd rebuilt on my own terms, about the life I'd constructed from the wreckage. No, not anymore. She smiled. Good, because you're not. You're one of the strongest people I know. I didn't feel strong when it was happening. That's usually how it works. Strength isn't about feeling confident. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you're terrified. Inside, I could hear Vanessa laughing at something on TV. Brick meowed, probably demanding his dinner. The house was warm and lived in and full of life. My life. The one I'd fought for. The one I'd earned. Later that night, after Danielle had gone home and Vanessa had retreated to her room, I stood in the doorway of my grandfather's old study. I'd converted it into a small home office, a place where I could work on side projects and manage household finances. On the wall, I'd hung a framed photo of him, one taken in the backyard of this very house decades ago. He was smiling, holding a garden hose, looking proud. I thought about the trust he'd established, about how he'd anticipated conflict and built in protections, about how his foresight had saved me when I needed it most. Thank you, I said quietly to the photo, for seeing me, for believing I was worth protecting. The house settled around me, those small creaks and groans that old buildings make. It wasn't just a structure anymore. It was a testament to resilience, to knowing your worth, to understanding that sometimes the people who should protect you won't, and that's when you have to protect yourself. I'd been thrown out on my birthday for being unemployed. They'd laughed, celebrated, treated me like garbage, but I'd come back. Not just with eviction papers and legal victories, though those mattered. I'd come back with something more important. With the understanding that I didn't need their approval or their love to have value. That I could build a life worth living even after everything fell apart. The house was mine. The life was mine. And nobody, not family or failure, could take that away again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.